Like so much this semester, should you go to grad school is a personal choice. There are some good reasons to go to grad school, but you would want to do it with your eyes wide open because there's a big difference between the promise and the reality of having an MFA. So why would you want to go to grad school? One of the biggest reasons might be that by the time you're ready to finish your BFA, you finally figured out how to make art, and then we kick you out. This is especially true in certain media where you have to have time to develop the technical skills to make the art at all, and just about the time that you've learned enough to be able to make the art that's been in your head this whole time. You graduate and lose access to all of the equipment and feedback that comes with art school. A graduate program is also one of the few places where you can dedicate 2 or 3 years to having the time and space to work. You can't get a student loan to just work and learn on your own. You might also want to go to grad school to work with certain faculty members, although I would say that you want to be a little bit careful with that, because there is often a big difference between someone who is a good artist and someone who is a good teacher. So don't pick a school just because you want to work with someone, unless you've gotten references that that person actually is an engaged teacher. Because you will be part of a larger graduate program, you will have the opportunity to make connections with peers, with faculty members, and perhaps with visiting artists and critics. You have to go to grad school and get an MFA if you want to teach at the college level. Though there is this kind of funny convention where some people get all offended if you actually say this out loud. They like to think that the pursuit of an MFA is about honing your art and not about silly things like employment. There are also a lot of reasons not to go to grad school. You wouldn't want to go to grad school just to delay contact with the real world. Pushing off the difficult transition into adulthood for another 2 to 3 years is a bad deal, especially if it takes student loans to do it. You also don't want to go to grad school because you're under the delusion that you will instantly become an art star. Most of the stories of critics and curators wandering the halls of MFA programs desperately seeking artists are greatly exaggerated. Don't go to grad school because you think it's going to be fun. It may or may not be a rewarding experience, but I don't think I've met anybody who said it was fun. Don't go to grad school if it will require you sinking yourself even further into debt with student loans. Getting a college degree absolutely will pay off eventually. Getting a graduate degree is a lot less certain. And you don't want to go to grad school on the assumption that it will immediately lead into a full-time tenure-track teaching position at a university. Academia in general is losing full-time positions, and positions in the humanities and fine arts are often the first to be cut. Increasingly, college teaching is done by a pool of adjuncts who are hired by the class, paid very little, and gain almost no benefits. It's not unheard of for a single full-time position at a university to attract 400 or 500 applications. And while some schools will be less competitive, there's still a lot more people with an MFA than there are jobs to go around. If you're going to go to grad school, make a good choice. You want to look for a program that's going to give you a lot of contact with the faculty. Because art departments tend to be small, a lot of areas will be led by a single faculty member. You want to make sure that you would have contact with the people outside of your chosen concentration as well. This is common, but not universal, so make sure you ask. Financial support is another huge concern. If you can get a scholarship, a fellowship, or some other free ride, then absolutely go to grad school. If somebody else is going to pay you to get better at your art, you should totally do that. It's when you have to take out loans that you want to start to question this whole process. Another important consideration for the graduate program is the peer-to-peer interaction. It's entirely possible you'll learn just as much from talking to your fellow graduate students as you do from talking to the faculty. So investigate how it's set up, how many other people are in the program, what's the culture like, are people rigorous and supportive, or is the community basically a rehash of your high school cafeteria? Make sure that you will be offered a dedicated studio space and that they're going to have all the equipment that you need. Art schools can make up for having a relatively small faculty with a robust visiting artist and critics program. Ask about how many people they bring onto campus, whether or not you'll be able to have a voice in suggesting artists, and what kind of access graduate students will have. Where the graduate program is located is another important consideration. Do you want to be able to build a network in a major cultural center? Or would you prefer a program that's a little more isolated so that you can focus with fewer distractions? And if you're going to grad school, make sure that it is a 60 credit hour MFA program, Master of Fine Arts. You need a terminal degree to teach at the university level, which means that you need an MFA, not an MA. There are some programs that award an MA at a certain credit hour benchmark, usually around 30 hours, and then you proceed on in the program to get your MFA. Though somewhat unusual, that system is fine. What you don't want to do is go to a program where the highest degree that you can get is an MA. You need to go and get your F. So how do you find out about the schools that you might apply to? Talking to your current faculty is a good idea, as they will have direct experience with a variety of programs, either because of the ones they have attended, taught at before, or have had students go on to. Another option is to select your school based on where you'd like to live. If it's your intention to move out of Fort Collins after you graduate, where are you going to go? And are there programs in that general area that would be attractive? You could also look at the resumes of artists that you respect and find out where they went, though there are problems with this method, as who's to say that that program is responsible for the artist, or if the artist is good despite that program. The College Art Association publishes an MFA guide, which is a good place to check for the kinds of concentrations that might be offered at different schools. Go to the reference desk at the library and ask them where you can find the Peterson's Guides. These exceptionally boring books are listings of graduate programs, but it will break down information that is a little bit harder to find in other resources. It can tell you the acceptance rate. It can tell you the average actual cost, tuition minus financial aid. And finally, you can use the U.S. News and World Report graduate school rankings. But we should talk about the deep flaws in that system. The methodology is terrible. Their rankings are based entirely on a survey that they mail out to art department chairs across the country. And while I think our department chair is great, what does she know about what's going on at other programs? If you look closely at the rankings and compare the actual scores, not the numerical rank, you'll see that there are a huge number of ties and microscopic distinctions. A school that might be ranked 24th could have the 7th or 8th highest score. You might have ties that cause the rankings to go from 8th to 15th to 24th, making it seem like there's a huge difference between a 24th ranked school and a top 10 8th ranked school, when really it's going to be 0.2 of a point. There can be a significant problem of timing. Marius in the drawing area speaks highly of his experience at SMU, so it's possible that our chair might rank SMU highly. The problem is, Marius got his degree over 20 years ago. The mentor that he worked with most closely has since retired. We've gone from secondhand information based on one person's experience to outdated secondhand experience. There's also a huge geographical bias. The schools that you can credibly evaluate as a department chair are naturally going to be the schools that are closer to you. You'll either have more interactions with them, or you'll at least know more about the programs. Schools on the coasts, especially in the Northeast, tend to have much higher rankings. They are really good programs, but there's also a lot of really great programs in the middle of the country, many of which are a much better deal financially, but they tend to get overlooked because there's a couple of 100 miles between them and the nearest MFA program. And finally, you should know that U.S. News and World Report only updates the rankings every 3 to 5 years. All that said about the terrible, no good, very bad, horrible U.S. News and World Report rankings. It is a big giant list of graduate programs across the country, and it will give you a sense of the perception, if not the reality, your degree will carry. Find a good fit, a program that's going to offer you a good financial deal, that's going to have the equipment that you need, and is going to nurture your development as an artist.